Hello, hello, hello. How's it going, guys?
Going great.
Hey.
How are you? Great to see everyone here.
Thanks,
Tan,
everybody, for tuning in.
yep. Tan, is it really you or are you an AI version of Tan?
This is definitely me. I always show up as my authentic self.
Amazing. Well, I know that I asked you all to do this session because based on popular demand from a lot of Vayner partners, everyone wants to hear the latest talk on AI with innumerable tests and pilots and studies that we've done over the last 3 years. Tan and James and Melissa, you all have been really driving this on the Vayner side from a practitionership perspective. I'm going to quickly introduce you and then I will let you get into the meat of the presentation. Tan is an ACD leading all things creative. James on the client partnership side of things, guiding our clients through this evolution. And Melissa, who's our EVP of Policy and Innovation, has been telling us what we're legally allowed to do with clients, helping shape this, and also find ways that we can get to a yes and a practical yes of how we're actually bringing this in day to day. And my take is that what we are saying at Vayner is actually pretty different than what the rest of the market believes when it comes to AI point solutions. So I'm really excited to get into this. Guys, are you ready to rock?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Tan's going to throw up the slides. And one of the things I'm most excited about with this is there's so much noise and so much in the news about this space. And I think what's great about this is we're going to really kind of like bring it down to earth and figure out like, okay, what's practical? How should I be thinking about this from a consumer perspective? How can I look to apply some of these tools for my business from a day-to-day perspective? I'm so excited to get into it. And hopefully these slides are loading. There we go, Tan. Awesome.
And we'll kick things off.
Thank you. Yeah, so Avery introduced us, but just to reiterate, I'm James Cerno, so I lead client partnerships here at VaynerX from a VP perspective, and I also run our Vayner 3 team, which is the innovation arm that sits within VaynerX. Melissa was already introduced as well as Tan, so I think we can just jump right in. So today's agenda, we'll talk through the state of AI. How did we get to where we are today? And then I think really specifically, we'll look at this AI for marketing framework. So there's so many layers of AI from supply chain optimization and things like that. We always like to ground ourselves and say, we are a marketing company built for marketing for the now. And so we want to really look at this through the lens of marketing in particular. And then lastly, we'll get into the fun stuff. Tan will take us through some great AI in action demos of the latest and greatest from a tools perspective. Awesome. So in terms of the state of AI itself actually isn't new. It's been around, I think, since the late 1940s, at least in terms of like the Turing test. And I don't know if anybody who's tuned in remembers in the 90s, there was that chess champion who was beaten by a computer. All of that stuff was actually AI. And even Google has had some AI automation since at least 2001 with their Google Ads PMax, which is essentially using AI to optimize media spends on specific platforms within Google. But really that inflection point was when Gen AI entered the mainstream, when ChatGPT launched in November of 2022. It was the fastest consumer app at the time to hit 100 million users. Just within 2 months, it reached that milestone. And so it just really shows how quickly this technology was adopted from a broad consumer perspective. Beginning in around 2023, we start to see other platforms like Midjourney and other point solutions come into the market. Creation starts going in platform. So even Meta, all of you now today within your Meta product suite, from Facebook to Instagram to WhatsApp, have native AI functionality built in, which is a lot of what we'll talk about today. And then we see things going just not from, text prompts and research to image generation to now even AI video coming into the mainstream and helping that scale out across the platforms as we get into 2025 and even beyond. If you jump to the next slide, Tan, I mentioned this at the top of the call. There's so much noise in the news from, Meta is investing here and this company is doing this and this company is using AI to drive sales. TikTok's got a lot of stuff going on in terms of AI influencer content, which Gary himself has been super vocal about as well. I don't know if anybody had seen this TV spot that ran during the NBA Finals in June. It was a completely AI-generated video. They were very, very open in that it was an AI TV spot. Definitely made a lot of noise and a lot of headlines online. If you haven't seen it, I definitely encourage you to go check it out. It was for Kalshi. It's a sports betting platform. But in terms of today, Tan, if you jump down to the next slide, the truth is most AI adoption, at least from an enterprise perspective, is still struggling. So we've seen this explosion from like a consumer use case perspective, but when it actually comes to organizations, there still is that gap. And there's a few reasons for this. One, there's a learning gap for tools and orgs, right? So you have to understand What are the tools? How do they work? How can I apply them in a way that's safe for my business? Which is hopefully some of what you'll learn on today's session. There's been this slow and flawed enterprise integration. Should I go from a point solution? Should I be licensing, OpenAI Enterprise? Should I be licensing something else? And we don't see necessarily individual use cases translating to the organization. So the way that you might be using ChatGPT, for your personal use, day to day, might not translate to, what you're doing when you get to your desk at work. And then lastly, there's this lack of focus and discipline, right? Again, going back to that noise, there's so much. What should I focus on? And where can I really hone in? And so those are a few of the things that we'll try to consolidate for you all today. Awesome. And as adoption has increased, so have the benefits, but also the risks. This is something you definitely want to be super, super wary of as you enter your AI journey within your organization. I always say we could probably have a pretty healthy debate about any of these things on this slide. But at least from our perspective, what we see, at least on the upside, there's certainly been this amount of, unleashed levels of creativity, for better or for worse. There's a lot of discussion in the design and the creative community around, this is good, this is bad. But regardless, there is more imagery, more video, more text, more opportunity to create now more than ever because of these tools. There's also a lot of opportunity for scientific breakthroughs. We won't go through this at all in this session, but just a lot of disease research and things like that can be applied from a medical perspective, operational efficiency as well, and then educational support. So I know brands like Duolingo have had a lot of success using AI to help tailor educational opportunities for those that use the platform. On the right, we have this clanker, which is a slang term for this anti-AI movement. There's a lot of backlash potential from a PR perspective. I won't name drop any names, but a big name fashion brand within the past couple months just got in some hot water because they actually used completely AI-generated imagery for a campaign and weren't super overt or clear that it was AI, and they received a lot of backlash in the trades and from their customers. So you definitely want to be on the watch out for that. Of course, still as ever, even when this technology first launched, a lot of fraud, bias, and hallucinations. And then, of course, IP theft, right? OpenAI is notoriously in a lawsuit right now with the New York Times, amongst many others, in terms of, where are they sourcing their data and all of that sort of stuff. So just some things to consider both on the pro and con side. So at VaynerX, our POV is that AI is an enabler. It's not a differentiator. Today, this technology is so widespread. It's becoming a commodity. It's truly actionable. What matters is how you, within your brand and within your business, apply this tech to scale, your efforts, especially from a social creative perspective, within that modern marketing engine. So if you know anything about VaynerX as an organization, we are all about making content, more content, cross-platform. How can you scale? And this is something that we feel is truly actionable and can help unlock some of that. Awesome. So again, going back to what we think through at VaynerX, we are so focused on the consumer and where consumer attention is and how the consumer will activate within this space. And so we've put together a nice chart here that kind of outlines how we see AI adoption and use going from passive to active within the past 5 years and where we see it going from beyond. So Tan, if you go to the next one, this yellow line is passive AI use and the bottom orange is active AI. And what we mean by passive is if you look at this 2010 to 2015 passive AI era that we have on the left, the algorithms that have governed all of these social platforms like Facebook, your newsfeed, like your Spotify recommendations, like your YouTube or Netflix recommendations, TikTok for sure, has been governed by AI. And that was really passive consumption because as a consumer, you weren't really doing anything other than watching or clicking or liking, and that was training the algorithm to then surface you more content that was relevant to you. As we progressed into late 2022, again, ChatGPT launches right around that time. That's where we start to see this transitional runway, so to speak, of consumers going from passively engaging with this technology to being a little bit more active in terms of entering prompt, making imagery, creating videos, et cetera. And now we're actually at this inflection point, Tan, if you can click on the next slide, where we're seeing it go fully exponential, where active AI use from a consumer standpoint is actually poised to pass passive AI use. So you see the biggest platforms like the Googles, like the Metas, like the Microsofts, Adobe, definitely from a creative perspective, integrating this technology into each of their platforms for everyday use by their consumers. And now where we're heading is we actually think hardware is going to make a really, really big impact in this space. Just last week, Meta had their Meta Connect. I know they had some snafus on stage with their demos, but the actual reviews that I've seen of the Meta Ray-Bans with the AI-enabled headset into them have actually been really, really positive. We know Meta is playing, Apple is playing in this space for sure. Google has a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline, Snap, et cetera. And so if you look at this chart, what you see bookending each of these eras, so to speak, Tan, if you jump ahead, is that the largest players in the space are the ones who are leading. And so Avery kind of teed this up at the top of the call, but where we're really starting to push our clients and where we ourselves as an organization are going is leaning into the native AI that is already in the platforms that you're using every day. So again, that's the Metas, that's the Googles, that's the Shopifys, and the TikToks, because that's where the consumers are. And we know from a regulatory perspective, and Melissa will touch on a little bit of this, we can get a little bit more in the weeds in terms of like what is safe and permitted use cases.
Sure. Just on this idea that we're going from passive to active, I think one of the biggest shifts we've seen over the last, 6 months to a year is AI and the features and functionality related to it are no longer this thing on the side. Like James said, these features and functionality, these tools are meeting you and your business where you already are. And there's a huge, huge, huge amount of benefit there, but something to think about for, governance professionals or legal teams, it's that we can no longer kind of sit on the sidelines and say, this is some side program. Everyone, let's submit our use cases and we'll get to it when we get to it. And we have a really big and clunky governance process. These tools are already in the day-to-day of where the business is functioning. So it's crucial as a governance professional to familiarize yourself with those tools and come up with the rules of the road for these tools that people are either already using or eager to use that are simply turned on with the switch of a button. It's kind of a really interesting point as well, because we kind of see the emergence more so of these enterprise players. So many of these companies are likely, sophisticated businesses your companies might already have relationships with. So, deepening those relationships with your vendors who you're already comfortable with, who have the sophistication of working with enterprise, and making sure that your business folks understand the rules of the road for using those is really the way to stand forward. Unfortunately, there's no magic pill that I can tell you the exact right way to deploy AI across your organization. Each organization has extremely, extremely unique needs and perspectives and data governance protocols and things of that nature. But I think it's really key that we can't wait. If us as governance professionals and policy setters wait, we're going to find ourselves with a very big shadow IT problem, because these tools are now integrated into people's personal lives and business lives. So putting your head in the sand and saying we'll deal with that when we get the time to is just simply not an option anymore. So to make sure that you maintain a compliant organization and a governance process that works for everyone, now is really the time to dig in. And the great starting place is those tools and vendors that are already right in front of you.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. It wouldn't be a VaynerX presentation without a few words from our founder and CEO, Gary. So we have a quick video here. It's about 60 seconds, but just wanted him to help us double tap on this belief from us that the key advantage is going in these platforms, as Melissa just hit on. So Tan, let's roll the tape.
We all talk about AI, and meanwhile, the most important AI in the world is sitting right here. It's the AI that runs these algos, and we completely are dismissing it. The good news is this is where AI is coming. The platforms are going to do it for us. It is my belief that we will be uploading our videos to Meta, and it'll be doing the AI editing for us because they know the distribution, and that will be replicated on the other platforms. So every single creative industry, VaynerMedia, Hollywood, Madison Avenue, is going to be massively affected by AI. I think I'm going to make feature films on a computer. Avicii sat in the middle of Europe on his computer and changed the world. So that's what's going to happen. Sorry, Hollywood. Sorry, VaynerMedia and other ad agencies. It's changing. You're in trouble. Sorry. Just like the Yellow Pages salesman was in trouble. Just like the bookstores were in trouble. Just like the taxi drivers were in trouble. The whole game's about to change. The end.
Awesome. Nice little hype reel. I'll only spend a few minutes on the next section because I want to be conscious of time. We're about at the halfway mark, and I want to give Tan ample time to go through the demos. But we just wanted to contextualize a little bit further in terms of specific use cases by tool. So Tan, if you jump ahead, from a marketing perspective, what we've done is we've essentially bucketed, and this is by no means an exhaustive list at all, but essentially what are some of the tools and use cases, and how can you all begin to understand from a marketing perspective how you can put some of this stuff to work? So I'll start on the left. answer engine is really what your like day-to-day I need information now is. It's kind of like, if anybody is now using ChatGPT or Perplexity or Gemini instead of Google, I personally am probably now asking ChatGPT more things than I used to Google, which is actually pretty crazy. But this is the category of tools where it's really that research, inspiration, ideation, etc. And again, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google Gemini all have that capability. From a task automation perspective, these are when you hear about like AI agents or bots that are able to do things on your behalf. Things like deep research, doing digital actions like go here and buy this. You could have an agent buy you something. ChatGPT has a functionality like this, Higgsfield and Jasper as well. Content production is one we hear most from our clients, right? So like, how can I make more content more effective, more tailored to my audience? And it's certainly something that's doable from a text, image, audio, even code, and of course, video generation perspective. Google has a whole suite of tools. Tan will show some of them towards the back. Midjourney was definitely one of the earlier ones that gained a lot of traction. We are a Google shop, so we use a lot of Adobe Firefly, of course, with Melissa and the legal team's proper vetting and permission. But just from a content execution perspective, definitely a lot of potential here. Hardware I talked about with that graph. I don't know if anybody has followed up on the news from the Meta Connect, but I would definitely encourage you all to go read up on that. A lot of exciting things happening there. Again, Apple is in the works on some things from a hardware perspective as well. OpenAI and Johnny Ive, they're cooking up something which I'm personally excited to see. I think that'll be coming sometime next year. And then lastly, media. So touched on this earlier in the presentation, but this has probably been the space that's been most impacted by AI the soonest, just from an optimization perspective. So using AI to better optimize and automate your spends across the campaigns, and that can be done, today with things like Meta Advantage Plus, Google Performance Max, Reddit has their own ad platforms, etc. Cool. So double clicking on some of these. So within marketing, really strategically deploying these tools is kind of the unlock to really jumpstarting that relevance, execution, and efficiency that we've been talking about. A lot on a slide here. I won't go into each of these individually, but there are specific use cases for those specific disciplines. So if you want deeper insights and social listening, you can use things like TikTok's Creative Center. X has their platform through Grok. If you're going to go for content creation, probably lean into more of your Adobe Creative Cloud. In that Gary video, he talked about uploading videos to Meta and having Meta do the AI optimization for us from a creative perspective, not just from a media perspective. And that can be done today in Meta's AI Sandbox. Personalization, translation, I think is going to be really, really huge. Coming out of the Apple event last week or 2 weeks ago, they have the AirPods that can now live translate language in front of you as you're speaking to somebody, thanks to AI, which is pretty insane. TikTok Symphony, TikTok doing a lot in this space. Media we've touched on, and then measurement. This one we won't go too deep on, but of course you want to make sure that the content and the creative or the whatever you're making that's getting deployed to your customers is actually working. And so how are you measuring effectiveness? And again, platforms like Google and Meta, YouTube, obviously sitting under the Google umbrella, have all platforms that can execute that. Awesome. So just to wrap before we get into the demos, how we create. So we're building native, we're building in-app, there's less friction, there's richer signals, we're leaning into the platforms, we're having signals write the brief, right? So like, what are we seeing performing well on social? What is popping up in our feeds? What trends, comments, et cetera, are we seeing that can help inform how we create? And then we're shipping fast. This is what Tan and his team are so good at, is making content quickly and being able to scale that. Distribution wins on the platform, right? Creative is the variable. If the creative is resonating, the algorithms are going to distribute it. And if it's being distributed, it's going to be seen by more people. Top performers compound. So doubling down on what's working and not being afraid to move away from what's not. And again, build in platform. By default, keep it in the platform and lean into the tools and the opportunities that are there. Awesome. 10. Oh, one last slide, actually. Thank you, 10. Key takeaways. So what you need to know. Go platform native. We've hit on that enough. I think AI is an enabler, not a differentiator. It's becoming a commodity. Everybody has access to it. The unlock is figuring out how are you going to deploy it to effect on behalf of your business. And lastly, do not forget, always assess the risk. I can't stress that enough. This is not, by means like a free space to just go play and everything's going to be great. You definitely want to be super, super smart and savvy with how you're deploying this stuff, especially from a consumer-facing perspective.
Awesome. Thanks, James. I want to hop into it because I want to get into the meat and potatoes of the demo, but I want to give framework because I know that a lot of this information can be very, very overwhelming. There's so many tools out there. We all use Gemini, GPT, Claude differently, right? at VaynerX, we have a simple model, right? How do we create organic content that really resonates with consumers in real time? So you're going to hear this term get thrown out a lot. It's AIM, it's analyze, ideate, make. And a lot of it is how do we listen to consumers in real time through TikTok, IG, comments, and so on? How do we ideate based on those signals? And how do we make quickly? I want to bring up this framework just to preface everything I'm going to go through, because this is going to kind of guide every parts of our demo. Everyone who's using AI that expects AI to do end to end is getting disappointed. So if they expect a prompt to just analyze all the copy, ideate for me, and just make the video for me, you're going to see AI slop. AI slop is human slop. You didn't pay attention to what you needed. The best framework I can give you as we hop into this demo is think like a rock climber. What is the first rock that will give you the most context or define the problem really well that lets you grab the second rock to hop over from analyze to ideate, and then last but not least, make. So we're going to go over a couple things. We're going to go over TikTok's ecosystem. We're going to go over Meta, and then we're going to use Gemini as kind of the workspace to kind of combine all this, right? Let me pull this up. And I know we're running low on time, but I just want to start first and foremost, right? A lot of us will start with our own accounts, right? So setting a baseline is extremely important. I'm just going to use Gary's as a baseline example, right? Let's say he has a bunch of IG Reels, right? The data, the AI within the platform we're talking about, the most underrated thing that we can look at are views against video, right? If you can't get someone to stop watching your video, even if the video is really, really, really good, you've wasted your time, right? So your titles and your thumbnails are basically like book covers. What we want to do here is use the in-platform data that we have, right? And let's just pull the screenshot of the most recent ones, right? I'm just going to do 3 of them, and I'll show you what we're going to do with it. The prompting is pretty simple, right? We want to set a baseline. So, hey, I want you to analyze the screenshots and create a table. Make sure it's extremely accurate. Give me the title, the total views against the title, a description of why the title works when it comes to getting more reach, more views, and then last but not least, suggest a title that can help increase the reach of these videos. So I'll talk this through. The reason we did all that was we want to set a baseline. We're using basically Instagram's data. You can use this with TikTok, YouTube, any platform, right? And you're using Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude to kind of be your workspace to combine data, and you're augmenting yourself. So typically, a post-creative strategist would go into an account, look at this, do it manually. In this case, they're basically orchestrating this, right? They're pointing the AI to the right direction. If you look right here, what it's doing is it's reviewing all of his videos, all of his titles, and it's analyzing the data against the total views. Why is this important? We mentioned titling is extremely important because people are scrolling really, really, really fast, right? And it's going to output an example here. And you notice the formatting's off. Give me a table instead. And oftentimes, the reason I say give me a table is it'll actually organize all of this in a way where we can easily understand. So you see right here, is the internet hurting the youth? 18 million views, and it breaks down to why it works, right? The reason we start here is we want to audit what's working and what's not. Even Gemini knew that I was taking these screenshots and it's including the top views at the top all the way to the bottom. What you can do to take this a step further is give me ideas based on my tone and brand of which videos I should create next. So you can see right here, this is a great starting point of using IG as the data point, right? But this doesn't extend and stop there, right? I want to go into TikTok's ecosystem more than anything, because I think this is extremely important. There's a lot of tools right here. You're going to see a lot of these platforms remove the friction of content creation. And you notice how I'm sticking with analyze and ideate a lot, because if you start with a really good idea, a video idea based on consumer content, you'll get better content at the end, right? So obviously you can use these features, they're great. But one of the most underrated things you can do is actually go to the TikTok One ecosystem. And if you click on top ads, for example, you can actually see live data on what works within, let's say, the US, and let's stick with beauty products, right? And I want to show you something extremely underrated, right? This one had 4.3 million views. When you click on it, you can see it. The breakdown of which audience it's hitting. I want you to really take a step further when it comes to social listening. You can actually download this video directly from here. We're gonna just use a new chat here. You can actually take this video, drop it here. I want you to analyze the hook of this video, and I want to give you the audience that it resonated with. Break down what worked about it and suggest 10 new titles for me. And then if you go back to TikTok, you can copy the approach here. And the creative approach actually tells you the audience it's hitting. So you can see these platforms have the highest quality data. And you remember my rock climbing analogy? I'm not giving every single data I can give to Gemini or my workspace. What I'm doing is I'm giving it what is the least amount of data I can give it, but the most contextualized, the most important, the most urgent. So that way I can create on-brand content for my specific use case or brand or short form video. And I think a lot of people don't know this tool about Gemini, but it can actually watch videos. And if you just define like the first 30 seconds is the hook, just watch that and then define what it's looking for. You can see it's doing all of that, right? It's understanding the video, dissecting it, reframing the audience connection, and then formulating new titles. And you can see it broke down, like the hook worked because there's a lot of urgency, problem identification, just basic things, but it also identified specific hooks based on that. I think this is extremely underrated because it can actually analyze what's working for you so you can amplify it organically. Of course, you can take it further, right? You can, I know that we're 2 minutes left. I just want to go over one more. Analyze this hook. This video got a few million views. That means it resonated with the audience. Give me 10 new titles for a video that I should make next. Be very novel seeking instead of objective seeking, and give me those titles so I can come up with a script and then also write copy for it. And I'll tell you why I'm doing this. What I'm doing is I'm providing the context, the voice and tone of the brand, and in this case, just Gary, right? I'm analyzing it. I'm coming up with new ideas. I'm telling it that it already has a lot of views, right? Because I know it from the platform itself. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to Meta to generate new titles from this, because each platform has a strength. Meta obviously is highly integrated into Instagram, Facebook, you name it. So it has context on copywriting and so on, right? And in this case, we can do this. Based on the titles above, I want to come up with a script for each of these videos to resonate with my audience. Build a table on the best title. I gave you 10, but find the best one that you think will resonate with my audience and write a script, build it in a table so it's easy for me to review. And you notice that a lot of people ask LLMs like Meta, Gemini, ChatGPT, give me the best one. I actually did the opposite. I gave it 10 options, and then I had it understand which one is the best one. And because Meta is trained on a lot of copy on Instagram, for example, it knows better language, right? And you can actually use it to write a script. It actually ranked it for me. It told me this one will resonate the most. It gave me an intro, setup, turning point, outcome. And that's kind of the breakdown of how we can use AI to kind of contextualize it with good data. And I want to end this with this. I know that I gave a lot of info. If you follow VaynerMedia on Instagram or TikTok, later on today, just shoot a DM to VaynerMedia. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this entire recording and make a workflow doc, and we'll share it with you. But essentially, one of the most underrated AI is already built in these platforms where we work and we connect with our consumers. It's extremely important because the data is high quality. All you need to do is use it to create new ideas. And that's our POV on marketing and AI.
We could probably do another hour just with Tan. You were going so fast, but chock full of incredible information. Tan, thank you for that. Friends who are watching this either now or after the fact, if you are interested, DM VaynerMedia, and we would love to chat about this. I did want to ask one question to Melissa, a good question we got from the audience. Someone who is currently using AI-generated images for their ads, what do they need to do from a best practices standpoint to disclose this? So far, there's been no negative response, but this person would like to have a response should they need it.
Sure. So I'll caveat this by saying, I'm a lawyer for Vayner, but I'm not your lawyer. So make sure that you are appropriately evaluating any advice that I give here. But I think the most important thing to think, and this is not just a legal concept, is don't be deceptive. When consumers are tricked or deceived, I think that's when you get unhappy folks. So it'll largely depend on, what your business is, what industry you're in, and how exactly you're using AI. Like if you were doing something to create a fictional product that looked way better than your product, that's going to be deceptive kind of no matter what you do. So I would caution against doing something like that. But I saw in the question, I was actually watching the chat, I thought this was really interesting, that there had been no consumer backlash, but they wanted to take a proactive approach. I think that's a really smart idea because a lot of the risk that comes here is not necessarily legal risk per se, it's PR risk. So if you're transparent with your consumer and build that trust and integrity in what you're doing, that's a great step, in my opinion. From a purely legal perspective, not a ton of guidance to give outside of the general principles that we follow for all of our advertising in terms of not being deceptive. However, the regulatory landscape is shifting quickly. There's been new legislation introduced in New York about, requiring disclosure for certain AI generated like actors and things like that. And I suspect that will not be the end of it. I think we're going to continue to see a lot of regulation here. So keep a close eye on it. I know that's not a complete answer for you, but everything should be grounded in not deceiving the consumer and not being deceptive and being transparent. And I think that helps with both from a PR perspective that kind of James alluded to at the outset of this, consumer backlash for improper uses of AI, but also protecting you from a legal point of view as well.
What I would add, though, is that even if you are not adding like an AI watermark or something, the platforms are. So when Meta or Google or YouTube is showing something that was created with generative AI, their magical AI systems know, and they will flag it already. So the consumer is already getting that little notification at the top in most cases. What we at Vayner have seen is, we do a lot of like background generation and things like that like a beach is a beach, and there's less sort of concern than there would be with an AI generated human who you might want to disclose. Melissa will remember we've been doing AI generated human ads since 2018 or 19, that shoot in Japan. So we've been playing in this space since far before it was cool, but we are seeing way more and more AI generated humans. Sometimes they're disclosed. We believe they always should be at this stage, but it's an interesting thing to keep an eye on, both from a legal perspective and also from a consumer disclosure. I like the suggestion of writing out your AI policy as a reactive statement, just in case. We have one of those at Vayner. Haven't needed to dust it off, but I'm sure we will at some point. All right. Thank you, everybody, so much. Thank you, Tan, James, and Melissa, for enlightening this audience. And we look forward to many more discussions on the wonderful world of AI.